Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. My guest today is Brighde Reed. I said I practiced it before. She spells it such a weird way, Brighde. We're going to talk about why it's spelled that way and pronounced Brighde, which I practiced and practiced. I always mess up names that are not phonetical, but she works with World Vegan Travel, and she's going to talk about some travel tips for vegans and also tell us a little bit about her story. Please welcome Brighde. Tell me why your name is spelled so complicated.
Well, so it's Brighde Reed, yes, and it's Brighde, and it's just one of several spellings of this name. And for those, it's Irish. So those people who there are some people that might know that sometimes Irish spellings of things can be a little bit different. If we think of Siobhan, sometimes it's spelled Soibhan, for example. But one way that you can always remember how to spell it and say it is my name has a long I sounding, which is IGH, like the word bright, fight, light, a long I sound. So Brighde. That's basically a trick.
Now, growing up, I don't know where you went to school, but were the teachers able to pronounce your name?
No, never. And I would let them suffer when they were calling the roll. Not very nice of me to do that, but that was my little sort of revenge, make them squirm a little bit. Not very kind, but that's how I was in my stroppy teenage years.
There's another name that she's a famous actress, and it's like you pronounce it Saoirse, but it's spelled like you would never. Like, you know what name I'm talking about?
I can't think, but yeah, there's a lot of them out there, but hopefully it means that people will remember me more. I don't know if that's
absolutely
true, but I'd like to think that.
Once we learn how to pronounce your name, how can we ever forget you? So tell us your story. Before you tell us about the wonderful organization World Vegan Travel that you founded, tell us your story of why you became vegan in the first place and when.
Yeah, sure. Well, I went vegetarian when I was just 7 years old, actually, and that was a personal choice. We were not a vegetarian family, and we would go out for walks in the English countryside. And I remember one time I was with my older brothers, and we went to a pond, like a big pond in the woods, and we went to feed the ducks. And as I don't think you're supposed to feed them bread anymore, but that's what we did when I was a child. And I remember walking back, and it was private land, although, in the UK, you often have public right of way to walk on private land. It was private land. And we went to feed the ducks. And then I was coming back, and then there were gunshots, and they were hunting those ducks. And I was just absolutely horrified. And I think I made a bit of a connection at that point. And I told my parents that I didn't want to eat meat anymore. And I was pretty much consistent with being vegetarian. And then when I was in my, early 30s, I knew vaguely about veganism as a concept, but I didn't know any vegans. I was living in Vietnam at that point and my partner, Seb, he purchased me the first iPhone. So you can imagine this was very exciting at the time. And there were these things called podcasts. And I always had loved listening to things through audio, and I was like, well, this sounds quite good. Anyway, there were not many podcasts in 2009. And now I stumbled across this one that was called at that time Vegetarian Food for Thought, which is still a podcast. She's been doing it for like 17 years or something. Food for Thought, it's called now. Back then it was Vegetarian Food for Thought, even though it was vegan. And to say that this content drew me in is a bit of an understatement. I went vegan very, very quickly after eating all of the animal dairy products that were left in my house. And then I became a very committed and excited vegetarian. I became a cooking fanatic. I would, be bringing vegan cookies every day to my workplace. At that point, I was a teacher in an international school, and I was just super, super enthusiastic about all of those things. I still cook every day, but I don't, you know, spend so much time because there are other things that I want to do. But that was basically my vegan story. I became a very passionate vegan. I did lots of activism in different countries as well. And then in 2017, to bring it back full circle, I ran our first luxury vegan group tour to Thailand in collaboration with Colleen Patrick Goudreau, that person that inspired me to go vegan in the first place. So it's kind of a bit of a full circle kind of thing there.
That's fantastic. Well, you said early 30s. You don't even look like you're 30 yet, to be honest.
Maybe that's that Zoom filter here. I don't know what's going on, but yes.
Please don't be so humble. So how long has World Vegan Travel been in existence?
Yeah, so as I said, we ran our first tour in 2017 to Thailand. It was kind of like, you know, trying it out, seeing if people would be interested and seeing if we could do it. I should also add that, you know, just doing a tour is not an easy thing that anyone can do off the top of their heads, because my partner, for example, Seb, who's also vegan and the co-founder of World Vegan Travel, Seb also has a huge travel experience. I also have some good travel experience as well, but he also worked in TV production. And as you can imagine, TV production is like this big logistic jigsaw puzzle that you need to figure out. So there's a lot of great skills there. And also my partner and I, Seb, we also met when I was tour leading for another company in the early 2000s. So we have this big travel experience. So that's basically sort of how it came apart, and also our friendship with Colleen Patrick Goudreau. We started our first tour in 2017 to Thailand. Then we did 2 tours in 2018 to France and to Vietnam. 2019, we had France and Rwanda. That was very exciting. And of course, 2020, we won't talk too much about that. But then since then, 21, we've been running trips to, we did Italy, Tuscany in Italy was our first trip in 21. And in 22, we did our first, well, we did Italy as well, but we also did our first Southern Africa trips. So yeah, we've just, each year when there's not a pandemic, we've been increasing the number of tours and the places where we go.
Wow. So are all your tours outside of the United States? So you don't really do travel inside the United States. Is that correct?
For now, yes, there's lots of places that we have a connection with overseas that we really want to show our travelers. We might do some tours in Canada. That's possible. We live very close to an absolutely beautiful area. We're on the Sea to Sky Highway near Whistler, Vancouver. So these are very, very scenic places, and definitely these would be, that would be amazing to run tours there too.
Wow. How many people traditionally go on a tour with you?
Yeah, so these are group tours. So they're luxury vegan group tours. So I would say our trips are usually from about like 12 people to about, the maximum we've done is 25, but usually I would say on average it's about 18 people.
Wow. So it's a kind of an intimate experience.
It is. It certainly isn't, you know, big tour bus with the tour guide holding flags everywhere you go, following and that kind of thing. It really does build a very nice community. Everyone gets to know each other really well. You know, you come away with some lifelong friends, I would say, and it gives us so much joy. Each one of our trips has a little WhatsApp group connected with it, and you know, they continue to chat and talk and spend time together. You know, we get meetups of saying, oh look, we caught up with each other when we did a trip to New York, for example, and I met up with another traveler who's from that area. So yeah, really nice. It creates lovely community too, as well as the nice experience of traveling.
So I'm guessing you are an actual travel agent yourself.
That's right. Seb and I, we have licensing and credentials to sell travel, but you don't come to us to buy like a flight to a place, or, you know, if you've got a particular thing, you know, you want to organize a holiday for you and your partner. That's not what we do. We organize group tours. So it's important to make that distinction, because some people get a little bit confused about what it is that we do.
Wow. How do people find you in general? Because until I heard of you, I hadn't heard of you.
Sure thing. Sure. So we have had a lot of success collaborating with, big people in the vegan space. Like I mentioned, Colleen Patrick Goudreau, she was the person that inspired me to go vegan, and she has quite a following. So she helps, we will create a trip for her followers that she thinks that they will love. And then, of course, she helps to sell them. So, of course, I cannot deny that has been amazing at getting us started. But also, for example, I've been on lots of podcasts, like I was on lots of people's podcasts. We were recently awarded from PETA animal-friendly safaris, that vegans can experience animal-friendly safaris by traveling with us. That was just actually a couple of weeks ago that was launched. And as a result, we've had like a lot of media buzz. And, I was interviewed on CBC radio the other day, and through Google as well. That's generally how people find me. And, you can ask your travel agent too.
Wow. I'm just curious, in general, as somebody who has the credentials of a travel agent, do you recommend that people take travel insurance when they go on trips that are especially international or cruises, and especially in light of what happened with the pandemic?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. This is a big topic, and I could happily sit here for ages and talk about it. But, for brevity's sake, yes, it's really important that you get at least one thing covered. That is that your medical expenses can be covered. Imagine, I always like to use an example of a friend of mine. When I was living in Hanoi, he had great medical insurance, so this worked out great. But he was in a motorbike accident, as you can imagine in Vietnam, that kind of thing can happen quite often. And as a result, you can imagine with some sort of shoulder accident, this is a really delicate area. And Vietnam hospitals are great. Don't get me wrong. They are really, really good for many things. But, if it's possible that you have the means to get to go to a hospital where you can get the absolute best medical care in this situation, you definitely want to have that. You don't want to be messing around with anything like that. And as a result, he had to be medevaced to Bangkok. And and you can imagine, you can't necessarily just sit in a normal seat when you're sick. You might have to be in an SOS plane. They have these special medical evacuation planes. So he had that, which is essentially a private plane, to Bangkok. And he had this complicated surgery, and he was fine. But I'm sure the bill from something like that would have been a couple of $100,000. For things like needing to go to doctors and having some antibiotics, that's not a big deal. That most people can pay out of pocket. But you want to be covered for these really big things. So that is the bare minimum that you should get coverage for. But also, depending on how expensive your trip is, if you spent $10,000, $15,000 on a trip, and that can happen, you might want to consider trip cancellation insurance. If you're sick and you can't travel, that's really important. That you might consider that to be important. Some people who are scared of flying, who feel that they might be scared to actually travel, for whatever reason it is, there are cancel for any reason insurance policies. You've got to be a little bit careful about these, because you've got to book them within a certain amount of time after you make your initial payment. They're called cancel for any reason insurance. If your trip is interrupted for insurance for some reason, if you are a keen photographer and you're carrying, $20,000 worth of gear, these are things that you might want to think about. So the short answer is yes. And I also gave my slightly longer answer. I'm sorry.
No, and I agree with you, because my mom always used to say it's better to have it and not to need it than need it and not to have it.
Oh.
And even if you perceive it as costly, the cost of having the medical expenses is astronomical. When I went on my honeymoon, we went on a cruise on our honeymoon, my first cruise in 1995. And I took the trip insurance because I'm a klutz. I wasn't thinking anything bad was going to happen. It wasn't like I was trying to create it, but I took it. And I ended up in Mexico with a life-threatening lung and liver infection. And I had to be hospitalized. And I was sick there, but luckily I was able to make it back to the United States and then be hospitalized. And, for a week. And it was, like you say, hundreds of thousands of dollars because if I didn't have the trip insurance. So I'm a fan of insurance. I really am. That's why I'm paying so much because, I can't wait actually for a few years when I'm 65 and have Medicare because that's my biggest bill is health insurance, but I still don't mind paying it because without it, you're screwed, basically.
There's a little tip that I think maybe your listeners might be interested in as well is, you've got to be really honest and upfront if you have any pre-existing conditions when you buy travel insurance. And the reason for that is depending on when the last time you had some treatment for this pre-existing condition, might depend on whether you'll get coverage or not. So, it doesn't mean to say that, oh no, I've got a pre-existing condition, I can never travel because they won't cover me if something happens when I'm away. That's a little bit all or nothing. What you need to do is you ideally talk to somebody, and if your condition is stable, then they will probably cover that. But the really important thing is that you go in there and you explain this is what I've got going on. I need to make sure that I have coverage for this. And an example of this is, say, for example, my mother, she's quite older now, but she has osteoporosis, for example, and she has quite weak bones. Now, the question is, if she were to fall over and break a couple of bones, would she be covered for that? Now, that's not to say that she wouldn't be covered, but it's definitely a really worthwhile thing to check. She should definitely check that before she travels.
Didn't the pandemic turn the travel industry upside down for a while?
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah. What are you going to do? I'm curious. And guys, if you have any questions for Brighde or for World Vegan Travel, please type them in the chat. I know that our viewers are going to ask, well, what about me? I'm on a special diet. I'm gluten-free. I'm oil-free. I'm sugar-free. I'm salt-free, whatever. I'm allergic to nuts. Can special diets be accommodated on these small group tours?
That's a great question. Honestly, it can be a little bit challenging. And sometimes we have to say to people that book, I just don't think it's going to be possible and practical. I would love to. Of course, it would be great if we could accommodate everybody. And I'm thinking about, your particular way of eating that you aspire to. It could be quite tricky. We would have to check with the hotels and the restaurants that we would go to. I think, the food, if it was possible, then the food might be a little bit repetitive. But for some people, as long as they know that they're going to be able to eat in a certain way, they don't live to eat, they eat to live, and they don't care as long as it's healthy, nutritious, and within the guidelines that they aspire to, then maybe that's okay. But it's not going to be a gourmet experience, and our trips generally are really quite amazing when it comes to food.
Yeah, but getting the vegan part has not been a problem for you, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. We often go to stay in vegan hotels, but not always. We go and eat at vegan restaurants, but not always. And we often veganize hotels for the duration of time when we stay there. And we work with restaurants to create delicious vegan food as well. And, it's a bit of a process, but we ask them at the beginning, are you up for the challenge? Do you want to try something new? And most of the time they're like, yeah. My partner at the moment, he's doing research for Japan trips in 2024. As I'm sure anyone that knows much about Japan knows that it's, they put fish in nearly everything. So this may be our biggest challenge yet, but we're up for it.
That's neat. What countries have you found are the most vegan friendly and some that are maybe less vegan friendly?
Yes. Okay. I love this question. So, Italy in my opinion, and this often surprises people, but Italy, I think, is very vegan friendly for some very specific reasons. First of all, it's really in North America where cheese is put on absolutely everything Italian food, really. In Italy, it's not like that. And it's very easy to say senza formaggio, so you can find pastas and pizzas, there's going to be lots and lots of carbs. That's, however you feel about that. And very often when you go into a restaurant and you look at a menu, whether it's got an English translation on, this is one of my tips that if we get time to, I would love to share with your listeners, is you can use your phone and Google Translate, and they have this OCR tech recognition where you basically hold your phone over the foreign language, and it will translate that in front of your very eyes onto your phone. And they usually will say spaghetti with this vegetable, this vegetable, this vegetable. So it's very, very clear whether it has meat or dairy in it. So you can just ask for the pizza or the pasta without those things, and they're absolutely fine with that. Not only that, in Italy, Italians, apparently, according to my Italian friend, are the biggest vegetable eaters in the world. So vegetables play a really big part in Italian cuisine. The quality of the produce is very, very high. I can pop cherry tomatoes in my mouth like candy. They're just so sweet. So, the produce is great, which makes it more delicious. And therefore, vegetables are very front and center of the food. Of course, in the big cities, there are some amazing Italian vegan restaurants, which make things great. And on top of that, we stay in some of these. There are some incredible vegan hotels in Italy, and like 100% vegetarian and 80-90% vegan as well. So if you want to, you can stay in some amazing places, really outside of the big cities, and have an incredible gourmet experience.
That's neat. Let's see if there's any questions in the chat, because I have plenty for sure.
Oh, you also asked about non-vegan friendly destinations.
Yeah, which ones were non-vegan friendly, and do they speak English in the places you're going? So do you have that barrier, like as far as having to explain what you need, or is there always someone in every country that you can speak English with to explain? Like, because I'm especially, my diet's crazy, so I'm not even talking about me, but there are people that might have like one food allergy, for example, where it could be very important to articulate that.
So when we travel, when we're organizing for our trips, of course, we're talking with people in the tourism industry and the hospitality industry. And as a result, everyone speaks good enough English to communicate these things. Really, it's quite incredible how widely it's spoken, in hotels. You can imagine that it's very widely spoken. So for me, that's not an issue. But when I'm thinking about like travelers, and again, this is hopefully something we'll get into when we talk about language, there are some really cool things that you can do to be able to communicate your allergies, your requirements in a way that will be very, very clear for them. So I'm thinking, for example, you could use Google Translate. You can star some phrases. They can be really helpful. You can create like a little printout sheet. I have like an example here that I can show you. So there are ways that you can communicate these things with things like a peanut allergy, something where there's a very severe allergic reaction. Then, obviously we can, you've got to make sure that you have your EpiPen close by, just in case, particularly if you're, a place where you're concerned there might be some cross-contamination, or maybe the message might have got through or misinterpreted some way. Then, of course, it would be a really good idea to have the necessary things for treatment. But in terms of places that are the least vegan friendly, I'm going to say Japan is going to be tricky for us to put a tour together. There are some amazing vegan restaurants in the big cities in Japan. But for us, I think when we talk about going to a hotel and getting them to veganize breakfast, for example. I think that's going to be more of a challenge. But something I know.
I don't mean to interrupt, but that is so funny that you said that, because that is one country that I actually traveled to and I didn't have a problem.
Right. Well, we're still at the beginning of this journey. We're going to be going to Japan in April for our Scout. Definitely, there are some amazing vegan restaurants there, but fish is used a lot in Japanese cuisine, and I would love to hear more about your experience and maybe get some tips from you, Chef AJ. I'm so sorry.
Hey, listen, I botched your name. You are completely free to botch mine the rest of the show.
I talk with
people don't realize we practice this. This is why I get so nervous. And then,
I'm just making fun of you.
That's so funny.
Sorry, Chef AJ.
No
but yes, but fish is used a lot in dishes in Japan, and as a result, it can be more of a challenging. What was your experience like?
So I was in Japan in 1994 because I used to be a comedian, and my agent sent me there for a job. And I had a translator, and they put me just in a hotel in Tokyo. It was like a 4 or 5 star hotel, so small. Like, I'm in a small office now. My hotel room was so small, like it was crazy. It was like almost the size of a small cabin.
Wow.
But breakfast was salad. This is where I got the idea for vegetables for breakfast, was in Japan, because they weren't feeding me as a vegan. They were just, this is the whole, like in the United States, you get a breakfast and it comes like it's orange juice, coffee, Danish, or eggs and bacon. Their breakfast every day was rice. So we know there was nothing in there. It was steamed rice. I mean, rice is rice. There was miso soup, and there was no meat in there. It was vegetable soup, and there was salad. I mean, they had other things, but those were 3 things that were always available. And I was like, this is great,
Well, I'm so happy that you had that experience. And I agree that those are great options, like having vegetables for breakfast and loading up on the salad at breakfast. That's a really great idea. I guess what I'm talking about more is the traditional Japanese gourmet experience. When I'm talking about how Japanese cuisine is considered one of the best in the world, but that cuisine as a whole is not very vegan friendly. So definitely you can manage, and you can eat healthily and as a vegan in Japan. I'm not saying that, but I'm talking about to have the whole Japanese cuisine experience, and that is what our travelers would like and would expect when they come on a tour with us. So I guess that's the difference in what we're talking about here when I say it's not super vegan friendly, because our travelers probably wouldn't be happy with a plate of salad for breakfast, because
of course, but I'm just saying I was ecstatic. So yeah, I get it.
Right.
Like, most people want more of the fancy stuff. So yeah, I get it. So you have like a little presentation for us, I believe.
I would love to share.
This would be a really helpful thing for vegans in general to know when they travel.
Sure. So I have a presentation that I've put together on like 9 best tips for vegan travel anywhere. And I think there's some really great resources here. Now I'm going to share my screen. I have 2 screens here, JL. So things might pop around a little bit when I share my screen. So let me see how I go here. Can you see me well?
Yes.
Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Great, that's what I want. And I'm just going to make you a little bit bigger because I want to be able to see you on this one as well.
Right. Okay. And I see your whole desktop. So is there a way to do it? Yes, slideshow.
There we go.
Press that.
I got it. All right. So I'd love to share with travelers the 9 best tips for vegan travel anywhere. This is something that I'm really passionate about for my business, but also in my personal life as well. So you already know a little bit about me, so I won't talk too much about that. But, I've lived in 7 different countries around the world. We run trips to lots of different places. And I also do have a podcast as well called the Well Vegan Travel Podcast. And this is a picture of one of our recent trips on sundowners, vegan sundowners with lots of elephants in the background. So, I have a little bit of authority when it comes to this. I'm not the most widely traveled person in the world, but certainly I've spent most of my adult life living out of the country where I was born. All right. So my first tip is to change your mindset. And I think this is something, Chef AJ, that you're going to probably connect with is, you know, if you look through the lens of lack, that is often what you will see. If you look through a lens of abundance, this is what you will see. And this is, Colleen is actually in this picture. This is when we were in Rwanda last year. She sort of coined this term. And, you know, it's not easy to do. You can't just sort of turn a switch and say, I'm going to look through a lens of abundance and through everything of my life from this moment moving on. But, you know, if this is something that you practice and practice and practice throughout your life, you will find that you will see opportunities rather than, you know, lack. So if you think to yourself, oh, there's nothing to eat here, and it's, you know, and you change it to like, oh, you know, I wonder if there's something that I can create here, or do some research and say, oh my goodness, I would really love to try this restaurant. Isn't it amazing that I can have a vegan beef bourguignon, for example? These kinds of things, this little attitude adjustment can be really, really helpful. And it's not something that's easy to do, especially if you have a tendency to sort of, you know, glass half empty kind of thing. And I have a tendency to do that sometimes. So it's something that really needs to be practiced, and it can really end up, you know, making the way that you look at everything a little bit better. So that's my first tip. Easier said than done, but definitely something to look at. So also, my second tip is to use apps and sites to help you. So I'm sure most people are familiar with Happy Cow. It's the gold standard when it comes to finding vegan restaurants when we're traveling. I'm not even going to go into that very much because I think most people know about it, but there are some others that are, I would imagine that most people don't know about, that I would love to share. I did open these up for you. So I just wanted to share some country-specific apps or websites. So most of the time, Happy Cow is in English. It's an English website. I'm sure there are some foreign, some other languages in there as well. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best. There can be country-specific apps that you can use that can be really helpful. And you don't even need to necessarily speak the language to use. So this is a French one, for example, and you can look at this straight away. You can see that the layout is very, very similar to Happy Cow. You can get a real sense as to what it's like there. You can see the pictures, you can navigate through the pictures, you can see the time that it's open. You don't need to speak French to be able to know it. You click on the listing, you've probably got a link here to copy and paste the place here so that you can pop it into here. Okay, there's a little embedded map here, and because it's in French, more French people use it, so it's going to be more comprehensive than Happy Cow would be. So that's one. Using country-specific apps like Veggie Resto. There's another one here as well that maybe people are not familiar with. It's called A Billion. It's actually Singaporean owned. And the really interesting thing about this one, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, is that not only does it cover vegan and veg-friendly restaurants, but it also will even drill down into a particular dish that is available in a restaurant. So this is me close by to my house. So you can see that actually reviewing particular, like even a blueberry turnover. They also review vegan products as well. You can see they have this here, and this is a really fun thing that not many people know about. Every single time you as a user do a review of a product, A Billion will donate $1 to one of their supporters, one of their sanctuaries. So you can, do a few reviews. You can create, let's say you do 10 reviews, you've got $10 in your A Billion bank, and then you assign that $10 to one of the 10 or so farm sanctuaries that they support or their causes that they support. And I happen to know that this really makes a difference to some farmed animal sanctuaries, that Greyton Farmed Animal Sanctuary in South Africa. So this is a really cool one to get into for sure. Another one, most people do not know about this. It's called Veggie Hotels. And I've just popped up one of the listings here. So Veggie Hotels covers all vegan, all vegetarian, and very, very vegan friendly hotels that you might want to go to. It's a German site, so Europe is very, very well represented. Europe has lots more vegan hotels and than North America, I will say that for sure. But you can find some really amazing places. And this is particularly helpful if you're looking to go to places off the beaten track a little bit, because we know that in the countryside, there are not so many vegan options. So this place, for example, we do actually stay here. This is in the Dolomites, Cesar Alm, which is a UNESCO World Heritage ski area, just a place of absolute outstanding natural beauty. And this place is completely vegetarian and 80–90% vegan. They have full board, half board. Our traveler, we stay here on our Northern Italy trips. It's absolutely amazing. So another thing that I really like about this site as well is it can force you to go to places that are off the beaten track. So if there is a hotel that you're like, oh my gosh, this place looks amazing, I want to stay there, then chances are it's off the beaten track a little bit, and you will get to explore a place that you might not have gone to otherwise. It's amazing. It's amazing. And I'm sure you could agree from this hotel here, you're not roughing it. You're not staying in a place that's not very nice, where the rooms are really tiny. It's absolutely gorgeous. And of course, there are some cheaper places, little small bed and breakfast, those kinds of things as well. But, you know, you can find some really incredible places throughout the world. Do you have any questions about that at all? I'm talking a lot.
I think it's amazing that there are vegan hotels in general. I didn't even know that. Are there any in the United States that are known as vegan hotels?
There are. I believe the Stanford Inn.
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh.
In Big Sur, I believe it is.
Yes, I've had them on the show. Jeff,
right.
And his wife. Yep.
So you can select a country right here. So you can see here that the Stanford Inn by the Sea is 100% vegan. But honestly, there are not that many. The North America needs to do a little bit of catching up in the US. You can see this one has vegetarian vegan cuisine. That probably means that they take it quite seriously. So there are quite a few here that's really nice. But then, for example, if I were to put in Germany, you can see Germany has 51, and there are some amazing ones there. And if I ask for, I can't search by, maybe I can filter, I don't want to waste anyone's time, but you can also filter by vegan only. But you can see that there are a lot of places, and this one, for example, is 100% vegan. This one is 100% vegan. You know, it's super, super amazing. There are so many in Europe. It's really fun. Yeah. Okay. My next one is this one, Veg Visits. And I actually interviewed the founders of this website on my podcast quite a while ago, and they call themselves like the Veg Airbnb. It's very much like Airbnb. And of course, you know, people might say to yourself, well, why would I bother going on a vegan Airbnb when most of the time when I go on Airbnb, I can get an entire place to myself. I can get a kitchen, all of those things. That's great. However, some people would prefer that their dollars went to a vegan rather than a non-vegan. And there are some reasons why some people might prefer to do that. And also, Veg Visits is a little bit like Airbnb was 10 years ago, when you were actually staying in people's homes, and, you know, that the whole experience wasn't so sort of perfect and manicured as it often is right now. And as a result, you know, you can often stay places a little bit more cheaply. You can get some great recommendations from the owner of the house, and you can stay in some amazing places. So I really recommend Veg Visits. It doesn't have a huge amount of coverage like Airbnb does, but it has quite a lot. Yeah. And my last one is the new kid on the block, which I think is very exciting. It's called theVegan Stay. And what they do is they connect vegans with vegan accommodations, but focusing specifically on farmed animal sanctuaries. So something that people might not know is that a lot of smaller sanctuaries, they will actually have some sort of accommodation on their property as a way to support and fund their sanctuary. So they might have like a little sanctuary with, let's say, 10 animals, for example. And we all know as vegans, it can be quite healing to go and spend some time on a farmed animal sanctuary. And you can stay in a sanctuary, and what's it for however long it is. And what the great thing about this is that the Vegan Stay will donate any fees that they would get to sanctuaries. So as you can imagine, when you book with Airbnb, there is an Airbnb fee, right? So with the Vegan Stay, they donate this fee to their sanctuaries. And also vegan accommodations like bed and breakfasts, hostels, they can also list here as well. So you can find them too, but any of the fees generated from that also go to their sanctuaries as well. So it's a really, really fun thing to do. So there are my tips right there for those ones.
Those are very helpful. So one of the viewers is asking, when it says a vegan hotel, does that mean everything is vegan, like all their bedding, not, no goose comforters and no, products tested on animals in the, in the bathroom, that kind of thing?
That's a great question. I would say chances are yes. Chances are that most vegan hotels would be ethical vegans, in which case that those kinds of things would be important to the hotels. So there's no criteria, there's no international standard or certification for this. I would be curious as to what veggie hotels do. Maybe they do have a criteria that makes them 100% vegan. I don't know about that. But if you wanted to be really, really sure of that, you could contact the hotel and just say, is your bedding vegan? And actually you can do that with any hotel. You can often request non-down bedding, and of course most vegan hotels would probably not have like a huge amount of like leather around the place. That can be also important, but it's worthwhile checking.
Well, thanks. And one of the viewers are saying, in Italy, do you get on your pizza vegan cheese, or is it just no cheese?
It's up to you. Sometimes you can get, there'll be vegan cheese available in a non-vegan restaurant. That does happen, but not so much. You could even try, if you really wanted to, and this is like level 5 kind of stuff, you could bring some vegan cheese and ask them to put it on. Sometimes that works. But also, vegan cheese is quite widely available. Certainly at vegan pizza restaurants, they have vegan cheese. And a lot of the places, they are starting to see that there is a market for vegan food. Gluten-free is also very, very popular in Italy. And as a result, there might be a vegan cheese option as well.
Nice.
But Italian pizza without cheese is still very good.
Yeah, cheeseless pizza is great. Have you gone to India by any chance?
I have, a long time ago, but yes.
Have you done a tour there yet?
No.
Would that be a place you'd consider, or?
Possibly. There's a really great company that does group tours called Veg Voyages. They do trips that are a little bit different to us. They do a lot of trips in India and Nepal. Zach Lovas, the founder, is a friend of mine. He's part of the Vegan Travel Summit, which is starting tomorrow, where we're actually going to be having 35 talks over a period of about a week. He will be presenting as well. But Veg Voyages, they do more sort of like sort of lower end homestays, very much cultural interaction, these kinds of tours, which is a different kind of niche to me, to World Vegan Travel, but they do a lot of India trips. So depending on the style of travel that you like, you might like to check them out.
Nice. What about Iceland? Have you been there?
No, but it's on the list.
Ah. Well, that's very cool. You know, I had, I forget who it was. Somebody sent me a picture. They were in Iceland and my picture was on a wall of a restaurant there, which like I thought, that was pretty exciting. That was
fun.
Pretty exciting. Well, gosh, this has been very, very, very helpful. Tell me a little bit about your podcast. Like, what's it about? There's a link to it in the show notes, but what kind of things do you discuss?
Yeah. So we talk about, it's a guest podcast. So I most of the time interview people and we can do like destination guides. For example, yesterday I recorded an episode on Portland as a possible destination. It's not just about the vegan food in a destination. I want to make that really clear. It's just vegans talking about travel. So for example, that episode about Portland is talking about the really great things that you don't want to miss when you go to Portland. And of course she has some recommendations for restaurants as well. So that's one part of it. We also interview people doing amazing things to protect human and non-human animals in a destination you could be visiting. So, for example, I recently did an interview with Sabrina from the Bear and Wolf Park, which is an incredible sanctuary for bears and wolves and lynx that you can go visit in the Black Forest in Germany. So those are other episodes that we do as well. Sometimes I just talk with, for example, I had you on as a guest a few months ago now when you were talking about tips for traveling as no oil, no salt. No oil, no salt. Tell me the other one.
No sofas, sugar, oil, flour, alcohol, salt, AKA no fun.
Thank you. You did a great episode on that. So, everything really, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Wow. Well, thank you for, the work you do. That's just is so great for people that want to do these wonderful, trips to really kind of what I would think of in a lot of ways are exotic places,
Yes. Yeah. We take the hassle out of the travel for sure.
That's fantastic.
Do we have time for me to keep going or
yeah,
are we
absolutely.
okay?
Yeah,
okay.
Of course, please.
Great. All right. So another tip is I would consider packing some supplies or tools with you. These can be really, really helpful. So even when we're traveling to Europe and we're going on a plane, we'll carry like a little cool bag, like the one that you see in the picture here with a little blue brick. And I often ask the hotel to freeze the blue brick overnight. And it's just because I want to maybe save some money and I can buy some like fun vegan meats and some fun vegan cheeses, and I can buy some bread and I can have the best lunch with often the best view, better than any restaurant, by making like some sandwiches and eating them in a park or from a viewpoint or on the road. It's much quicker than sitting for a 2-hour lunch somewhere. So I like to bring a little cool bag. Tupperware is really useful so that, your vegan cheeses don't get all squished and gross and your grapes don't get squashed. That can be really helpful. A sharp knife. I've been carrying that little sharp knife that you see in the picture for more than 10 years. Obviously, make sure you don't put it in your carry-on. A tea towel is really great. Acts as like a napkin, as a tablecloth, as you see right here in the picture. A little bit of cutlery is great. So, you can buy some yogurts. I also, sometimes you can even carry a small appliance like a blender or an Instant Pot or something like that. That can be really helpful. Obviously, not necessarily if you're traveling by a plane, but if you know, you can make some great one-pot meals if you're staying in a place with a small kitchenette. You know, you don't want to be cooking for hours and hours, but that can be really helpful. So consider packing some supplies or tools can be really good. I think this will probably be something that you will align with, Chef AJ, is it's a really good idea to consume some nutrient-rich foods a few times a day. Now, I don't have a particular diet, but I do find that I will take advantage of all of the amazing vegan food on offer. Or if the options aren't so great, I will often end up just eating a carb fest for the day. And there's nothing hugely wrong with that unless you've got some sort of health condition for a short amount of time. But I want to feel my best when I'm traveling. So I really try to load up on fruit and vegetables at breakfast time, because very often in a non-vegan hotel, the breakfast isn't that great for vegans. You know, it's going to be just a carb, big white bread fest, and then some fruits and vegetables. And a plate of food like this is perfectly nice, but I can get 4 or 5 servings of vegetables and fruits just at breakfast time. And that just really makes me feel better about some maybe less great choices that I might make throughout the day, knowing I've got some bases covered. I also invite people to consider some sort of greens powder. This is something that I've taken with me when I've gone trekking in Nepal. Trekking Nepal is very vegan friendly, but they don't have a lot of vegetables, especially in higher up altitudes. And this is a really bad, terrible thing for people that live there full time in these altitudes. It's really, you know, very often they're malnourished. It's very, very upsetting. But as travelers, you know, we can get some of our nutrients covered by having a greens powder. You can try some freeze-dried vegetable snacks, kale chips and fruit leather. Indulge in the local produce. Those incredible tomatoes in southern Italy, you know, that's kind of fruits and vegetables that are going to get me excited. Like an apple is not going to cut it for me, I'm sorry to say, but some delicious local produce, the sweetest pineapples that you could possibly imagine that you buy on the street in Thailand, for example. This type of local produce is going to get your nutrients up a little bit. And then, of course, your vitamin supplements and B12 are really important, whether, you know, to continue, whether you're just traveling for a week or two, whether it's something long term. So those are my suggestions. My 5th tip is to, you know, write a wish list. What are some things that you want to, places that you would love to eat when you're traveling? It's a good idea to do some research ahead of time. There are some amazing content there in the form of blog posts. For example, I've just listed Nomadic Vegan there. She stopped blogging recently, which is a little bit sad, but her vegan travel blog is huge. If you Google vegan travel guide Seville, for example, you're going to get some really great articles come up, and they're often updated every now and then, because travel blogs, they need to keep things updated for them to continue to rank highly on Google. So they often update their content. So this is great. And also we're seeing this not explosion, but definitely there's this group of vegan travel YouTubers that love to travel and specifically share their favorite eats of a particular destination. So a couple that jump into mind is V Rated for Vegan. She's Eunice Reyes. She's an absolute superstar. And she has an ebook as well on travel in Spain. And another one that I'm thinking off the top of my head, oh gosh, it was there. It's got our Vegan Travel Diaries as well. So there are some people that are doing some really great vegan travel guides in the YouTube space as well. So those are some really fun things that you can do. And another thing that you can do is when you've done this research, you can star all of these restaurants in Google, so that no matter where you are in a particular city, you've just finished your time at Le Louvre in Paris, and you can go onto your Google Maps and you can see all of these places that you starred, whether it's Happy Cow or those resources that I mentioned before, or whether it's from these blog posts. You can star these ones, and you can know, oh, okay, there's a great place that I know that I'm interested in because I starred it, and it's just a couple of blocks away. So another thing that you can do is to let your accommodation know ahead of time. So this picture was actually taken on the grounds of our 100% vegan villa that we stay in Tuscany. You can see it's vineyards there, that's in olive groves all around. But not all hotels are vegan yet. And you can definitely do some things to let your accommodation know. Now, I'll just decide whether I'm going to let an accommodation know depending on how long I'm staying there and whether I'm in a city. So for example, if I'm staying in a city, even if breakfast is included, I probably wouldn't even bother telling that I'm vegan, because I'm going to know that they're probably going to have some non-dairy milk. I've got my coffee covered. I'm going to be saving myself for lunch and dinner because I'm going to try all of these amazing places. So I probably wouldn't in that situation. But if I was staying at a resort and I'm going to be there for a week and I know there's not going to be a lot of food options outside of that hotel, then you bet I'm going to be asking them to what they can do for me, if they can accommodate me, and what I would really love to see. So that can be really helpful. I'd like them to know that they're going to have some non-dairy milk for my coffee and for me. And also, I'm going to be expecting to spend lunch and dinner there as well, because I'm going to relax and enjoy the pool and the beach and all of those things. What kind of things do you have? And if you don't have anything much, will you be able to make me something a little bit different? So those are some tips for letting your accommodation know ahead of time.
Cool.
So this one is really, really fun. I really would invite people to do this. Often it's considered like the most work, but with the most work comes the most reward. So the thing is, you can learn or have access to a little of the language. So there are a few things that you can do. You can download the Google Translate app. This is really, really great, but there are some features of the Google Translate app that I don't think people will necessarily be familiar with. And I'm going to see if I can get this up here so that I can show it to you right here. So when you look at Google Translate, it will look a little bit like this. I might just stop sharing for a minute so I'll be a little bit bigger. So you can enter your text. So you can say something like, I am vegan, for example, and it's going to have the Sono Vegano here. And when I click on that as well, it will also give me the opportunity to have it read to me. So you can tap that little icon there and it will actually say it. Let's see.
Sono vegano.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, that's sono vegano. That's so
Sono
cool.
vegano. Exactly. So sorry, it's hard for me to do this. So you can even you can even say something. You can tap that little microphone thing and you can say something. So for example, I am vegan. It detects what you're saying and it will translate it. So that means that the person that you're speaking to can speak into your Google Translate and that it will translate into English. Is it perfect? No, but it's pretty good. And like I said as well, they have this little camera icon as well, so that you can actually scan something and it will translate in front of your very eyes. And it will even do some sort of tricky fonts as well. Another thing that I really recommend people doing as well is to download the language that they're going to ahead of time. So you can download these language packs in Google Translate. So that's going to help you if you have any internet issues. Another thing I would really encourage people to do is to have a few language lessons. You can go onto platforms like italki. There are lots of these platforms, and you can find an Italian or French teacher. And it doesn't mean you have to start the language from scratch. All you want to do is you want to learn a few key phrases, maybe learn how to make a couple of jokes and get your pronunciation right. And you can do that for you know, $8 for an hour lesson on italki. It's really reasonably priced. You can get exactly what you want done. So that's great for learning the language. Then there's ways that you can access the language. So Google Translate, you can download your target language. Another thing that you can do is you can star important phrases. So if there are phrases that you're using all of the time, you can star those, like I'm vegan. Do you have anything that's vegan? I don't eat meat and dairy, for example. You can star these phrases so that you're not typing them in all of the time. I talked a little bit about this optical character recognition, where you can use your phone to like scan a menu or an ingredients list and it will translate in your eyes. I talked about the audio. And also there I have a language sheet. I think I've linked to it in the show notes there, where you can basically download this sheet, and then you can go on to Google Translate and you can copy and paste all of these phrases in there. So you just print that out and you keep it in your wallet, so you can just produce it when you're ordering at a restaurant. So that can be helpful.
Do you ever like take somebody with you in the group tour that just knows that language perfectly?
So, well, when we're traveling, when we're running a group tour, we've organized everything ahead of time. So we start talking with restaurants, you know, like months before. And so it's really not that big of an issue. When we come, they're expecting us. We don't just arrive with like 20 vegans wanting a table for 20, you know, we've done it all ahead of time. So that's not an issue. And we do sometimes partner with like local tourism tour operators to help with certain things as well. We often have tour guides accompanying us as well to give us some insight into the history and culture of a place, because we're not Italian. We don't know everything about Italy. So we need to have experts on hand that will help us to access all of that incredible history, architecture, art, all of that. And of course, you know, they're there in case of an emergencies as well. But when we take our travelers to a place, then we've done all of the legwork. We're not there sort of looking at a menu, trying to piece something together.
Nice. Somebody's asking, have you ever gone or considered going to the Galapagos Islands?
Yes, but not yet.
Ah.
Travelers, listeners, probably it would be helpful for them to know, when we decide to do a trip in a new destination, it is a very big investment of time and energy, and also money as well, because we go to the place. For example, when we run these Japan trips, we will have spent many months researching, connecting with hotels, training them. We will have done a trip to Japan already. That's a big investment of time and money. And as a result, we can't just sort of like put destinations on the website as a whim. These are things that are very, very carefully thought through, and we've done a lot of work. So, you know, we don't cover the world yet. We would love to, but some destinations are just lower down the list than others for the reasons that I just stated.
Sure. Sounds great, though.
My 8th tip is to leverage social media. This can be really helpful. So my vegan travel foodies told me about this one. If you hashtag vegan destination, so for example, hashtag vegan Seville, you will often get a lot of great stuff that isn't necessarily going to be on Happy Cow, or maybe you'll learn about particular dishes that you might like to try. So hashtag vegan and the destination that you're going to can be really, really, really helpful. Also, Facebook groups. There are Facebook groups for so many destinations. So for example, in my small town, we have a Squamish Vegans Facebook group. It's mainly for Squamish vegans, but it also means that you can join those groups if you're traveling to Squamish, for example, and you might like to ask some questions, and not necessarily something as simple as what's your favorite vegan restaurant. You might want their insight, but you could probably find the information just as easily online. But they might be able to answer questions. For example, this sanctuary or animal experience I've read about, it looks really good. It looks like it aligns with my vegan values, but I'm not quite sure. What's your perspective? So these Facebook groups can be really helpful. And meetup groups as well. Meetup is a platform that connects people that live in an area with whatever it is that they're interested in. And there are lots of vegan meetup groups, and they often have events, whether it's just some sort of activism event or some food get together, or a potluck. What a great way that you can meet local vegans in that area that you go to as well. Or maybe have an experience like go do an activism event, for example. When I wasn't living in Vancouver, I was living in Thailand. Whenever I came to Vancouver, I would always join the local Animal Save meetup that corresponded, and I would do like some bearing witness at a local chicken slaughterhouse. So that was something that I liked to do at that point in my life. But you can meet people, you can do some activism. There might be some sort of hiking trip that they're doing, or a hiking day, and you can meet some vegans in the local area. So those are my tips there. And my last tip is, if you don't want to do any of those things, if all of that just feels like a little bit like too much hard work, then use some vegan travel professionals to help you. So there are some, not many, but there are some vegan travel agents, vegan travel advisors, and there are some vegan tour operators. So I really like this picture because this is me, and this is Kim Giovacco. She is the owner of Veg Jaunts and Journeys. She does vegan tours as well to some really interesting places, mainly in Europe. And this is Donna Zeichfinger. Donna Zeichfinger is a vegan travel agent. She's been doing vegan travel since like the 1980s or something. This is Verena Erhardt. She runs vegan walking tours in New York, but she's also looking to get into running some international vegan tours as well. And we are all together in Korea. Why? Because the tourism organization of Korea invited us and some other vegan influencers as well to experience to see what Korea had to offer in terms of vegan offerings. So they basically they put us up in the most beautiful, incredible hotels like the Four Seasons and the Hyatt and all of these kind of amazing places. And they took us around Korea to showcase what Korea has to offer for vegans. And as a result, I really want to put together a vegan Korean trip, because honestly, my perspective was that Korean was not very vegan friendly. It's not very, very vegan friendly, but it has potential, and they have some really, really cool things going on. So, using vegan travel professionals is a really great way to have an amazing vegan travel experience without having to do a lot of work.
Wow.
Those are all my tips, Chef AJ.
I think it was Donna that referred you to the show, if I remember correctly. Would that
I think correct? So. That's right. She told me that she'd done a trip with, she'd done a session with you, and it was a lot of fun. So yeah.
Nice. I keep hearing that Israel is like the most vegan friendly country in the world. Is that true?
I have heard that it's also very vegan friendly. We actually have one of the talks on our vegan travel summit that starts tomorrow. It goes for a week. If anyone's interested, they can go to summit.vegantravelassociation.com and they can register there. And one of the talks is about Israel being a very vegan friendly destination. So certainly people can check that out, as well as some of the other talks that are there as well.
If you'd like to email me right after the show, the link to that summit, I'm happy to put it in the show notes.
Sure, I will do that.
Is that a free summit anyone can watch?
Absolutely.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yes. The Vegan Travel Association is a really cool project that me and Donna and about 3 or 4 others in the vegan travel space are putting together. We have our annual summit, which I said is happening tomorrow. We have mini summits throughout the year, just like a weekend, usually themed. I'm also looking to put together a travel association. So this is basically companies, people in the travel industry can become accredited with us. They can have, they can join the Vegan Travel Association. Of course, there will be certain benefits for joining that. And of course, travelers can look to the Vegan Travel Association to find those members as well. You don't necessarily have to be a vegan travel company to be a participate, but certain criteria will need to be available. So these are some of the projects that we're working on.
Now, this might seem like a weird question, but do you have to be vegan to tour with you? Because I know, like, especially on the cruise, there were mixed couples on the vegan cruise because not everybody's married to a vegan. So do you ever get non-vegans traveling with you?
Yes, we do. We do. We get a vegan partner and a non-vegan spouse join us. We have vegan friends who bring another non-vegan friend with them on the trip. And I mean, I'd like to address like this idea that, oh, the non-vegan has to be dragged kicking and screaming on the vegan holiday. Actually, that's not been my experience. Most of the non-vegans think that they have actually eaten incredibly well because, you know, we put so much time into making the food so good. But also there's a sense of fairness and justice in there. For example, I have this one couple spring to mind. They mentioned it on their testimonial, which I thought was great. The wife was vegan, the husband was not. They love to travel. And the husband, it was actually the husband's idea. He said, look, when we travel, you're always getting the short end of the stick when it comes to the food. Let's do a vegan tour so that you actually get to eat really delicious food. And I'm sure the food will be fine for me. You know, that's not the whole reason why we travel is for the food. But, you know, I want to be able to survive. I don't want to be hungry. And they were actually surprised that the food was really good. And since then, they've joined us in Northern Italy and they're joining us in Thailand as well. So, you know, the idea that the non-vegan is dragged kicking and screaming to the vegan tour is not necessarily accurate.
But do they eat vegan with you? Because I know one of the complaints people had on the holistic holiday at sea is they didn't want to eat with people eating meat at the same table.
Correct. No, you if you're non-vegan, you are very welcome, but you're expected to respect vegan values by that. So, of course, you would be eating vegan. We go so far as in public non-vegan restaurants, we try to get our group seated in a way that, you know, we won't be near the animal products as well. So we're quite cognizant of those kinds of things. And I would also, you know, question and, you know, approach a non-vegan if they were sort of like giving vegans a hard time about being vegan. I would be like, hang on a minute. The vegan's not here to have a debate to justify their lifestyle right now. I would say, you know, just lay off that. But honestly, that has never been a problem. The non-vegans are very, very respectful and they're sensitive. And there's never been a situation where I've had to say, oh, what you're eating is non-vegan, could you not? That's never been an issue.
All right. Lou wants to know, are these non-smoking groups?
That's a great question. I don't think we have had a single smoker on any of our trips. And so all of that to say, I'm trying to think. Smoking isn't banned, but it's very difficult to smoke these days in hotels, in restaurants, in bars, even in places. So even if there was a smoker who really who wanted to smoke, again, I don't think we've had a single smoker on our trips ever. But I'm thinking about our itinerary. It would be very hard for them to smoke in a way that would bother other people.
Yeah, but I guess what they do in their own room is, if it's allowed, is their own right.
Yeah, of course.
Paula says she'll be taking her first world vegan travel tip to the French countryside this fall with her almost vegan hubby, and she's excited. That sounds lovely.
Oh, this is a very exciting trip. because anyone that knows France to Bordeaux in the southwest of France is actually not vegan friendly at all. Like it's a bit of a battle. Like you pizza with tomato sauce and some vegetables is probably like the best that you'll get in, particularly in the countryside. But the southwest of France is very much a culinary destination. You know, we think of awful things like foie gras and duck meat and all of these kinds of things. So we'll be looking to incorporate all of the fat, all of the taste, flavors, textures, herbs and spices that make this area of France so famous, but of course making them vegan friendly, and of course using the incredible French produce that's available at that time of year in France, because French produce is amazing.
You mentioned something Squamish. Apple says, what is Squamish?
Squamish is the town that I live in. It's about 45 minutes north of Vancouver and 45 minutes south of Whistler. And Squamish is actually the name of the First Nations that lived here, Squamish Nation. And Squamish actually means, in the Squamish language, means mother of winds. So actually where I live is at the base of a fjord. I'll show it to you on a map. I don't know whether this is interesting, but as a result, we get a lot of, show my screen here. We get a lot of wind. So you can see here is Vancouver. And this is actually a fjord, and we live right at the bottom of a fjord. We have like a river here, and you can see there's fjords here, and you can see, you know, we live in the mountains here. So it's a very beautiful part of the world. We love it, and it's very, very scenic. And yeah, that's the meaning behind the word Squamish. It's a First Nations word.
Nice.
And the name of the nation that lives here.
Do you ever go to countries where you have to worry about like the water and stuff? Like, you know, I work in Mexico a lot, and we have to be really careful to not drink the water, at least, you know, the local water.
Exactly. So we do definitely go to places where you should be careful about drinking water from the tap. It depends on where you're going. But for example, you know, often there's advice like, you know, don't eat uncooked vegetables because they're going to be washed with, you know, you don't know the water it's been washed with, or don't have the ice, for example. And, you know, in my opinion, you know, there are places where I don't worry so much about that because I know it's going to be purified water. For example, I lived in Thailand for 10 years, and I know that all of the ice is from purified water. Whenever they wash the vegetables, it's purified water. The water's not so bad, that the likelihood of me getting unwell is quite low. And so we do go to those places, but you can buy some really great products these days, because I know a lot of people worry about using a lot of plastic bottles. And of course, if that's what you have to do to stay safe, then of course, you know, that's something that you need to do. But you can buy very, very cheaply little iodine tablets that do change the taste of the water a little bit, but it's not bad. I use these when I go trekking, for example, and they even have, oh my goodness. Oh, I wish I could. I've got some of these devices. I could bring them and show you, but there's like a Lark water bottle as well, that actually purifies water. You pop the water in, you twist it. It's a really nice metal bottle. You press this button, you just agitate the water for 90 seconds and it purifies the water. There's things like the Life Straw as well, although that's pretty good, but not quite as good as this UV treatment. And there's even these ones where you can just pop the water in the top and you push it through a filter, and that cleans it. That's often used when you're hiking as well, and you know, you're taking waters from streams. There's also the SteriPen as well. There's a little wand that you agitate through the water for 90 seconds, and then that's cleaned your water. So there's a few ways that you can make sure that the water is clean for you to drink.
That is those would be very helpful tips, you know.
Yep.
Add that to your presentation. So I pulled up the name that I couldn't pronounce of the actress whose last name is Ronan. Tell me if this is something you know how to pronounce. Saoirse. Irse. She's a famous actress, beautiful. And I think she says she's Irish, but I think it's pronounced like Saoirse or something like that.
Okay. So here's something you need to know. My name is Irish. I am not Irish. So I can't really, I wouldn't know how to say that name.
Okay.
Sorry to say.
Somebody's asking what your accent is.
Great question. So I grew up in the UK, and so it's mainly a very standard Southern British accent. And then when I was 18, my family and I emigrated to Australia, where I thought I was going to live forever and ever. I lived there for like 6 years in total. And as a result, I picked up a little, some Australian words and, sorry, I should say a bit of an Australian accent. But I've lived out of Australia since I was like 28. But I've spent most of my time since then living in places where there's been a very international community. So I worked at international schools. So the people that I was with were lots of different accents, lots of different people, some native speakers, some not. So as a result, I guess I have this sort of very, I don't want to say bland, but sort of this nondescript accent.
That's funny. Linda says, where did you live in Thailand?
I lived there over 3 different stints, 2 times as a vegan, 1 as just a vegetarian. My first time I lived there, I was tour leading for another travel company, as I mentioned, in the early 2000s. And I was traveling all around at that time, although Bangkok was my base. The second time and third time that I lived there was as an international school, 2 different ones, but they were in Bangkok, downtown Bangkok. Great fun city.
What of all the countries you visited so far, what has been your favorite?
Oh my goodness, that is really hard because there's places that are good for different reasons. But I think I will say Rwanda. And because I've seen my experience of Rwanda from my own eyes, and then my experience of Rwanda from many of my travelers' eyes, and it really does surprise people. People go to Rwanda to see the mountain gorillas. That's why I went to Rwanda, but there is so much more to Rwanda than that. There is so much to learn from Rwanda's history and the people, and it's actually very beautiful. It's known as the land of 1,000 hills. It's so scenic. It's one of the most afforested countries on the planet. They've been banning plastic bags there since 2007. More than 60% of the people in government are women. They have Umuganda, which is a community service that everybody of working age is required to go to every first Saturday of the month. Everyone participates. And can you imagine every single person in the United States every month on a Saturday morning happily participating in community service?
No.
A signed community service where you don't know what you're doing. No, but this is what happens in Rwanda. And of course, their recent history with the genocide, there's so much, and their recovery from that is something that's very, very humbling.
Right. Well, who knows? Maybe one day, if we live long enough, you'll be doing these tours to the moon, to Mars. Who knows?
Maybe.
That be something. Well, thank you. It was so fun getting to know a little bit more about you and what you do. It sounds like for people, look, I'm going to be honest. I like staying home. I mean, I didn't have a house until I was in my 60s, so I don't want to go anywhere. But for people that do, I'm so happy that agencies exist like you so that people can do it in such a vegan, friendly, compassionate way and with like-minded people.
That's a big part of group travel, like-minded people for sure.
Absolutely. Well, you were a delight. Thank you so much, Brighde.
Thank you. Chef AJ, it was a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for giving me so much time to share all of this stuff about vegan travel. It was really
love
fun.
Talking to people, they keep trying to get me to do these 60-second reels on YouTube. And it's like, people have the attention span of a gnat now. So my show's not for everyone, but I can't live my life in 60-second intervals. This is how conversations go. But please send me the information for the summit, because I'll put it immediately in the show notes, because it sounds fascinating.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chef AJ. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back in about 20 minutes when we have another fabulous show all the way from India. We have international guests today, Dr. Nandita Shah.